Now, coming to the point, what is a multiple choice question? Here, say for example, we have the acronym IST represents. So this is a question item, or we can call this to be as an item stem or question stem, which means it is a problem and there are 4 alternatives, among which one will be the correct answer to the multiple choice question, and the rest of the 3 will be the distractors. That is, these are the incorrect answers presented as alternatives to the correct answer for a given multiple choice question. So if you just look at this example, ISD represents a correct answer is instruction systems design. And the 3 distractors, they are also appealing alternatives, which should be very close to the correct answer in such a way that one has to give the distractors. And one more point I would like to stress upon here is that before giving the distractors, we should give the correct answer, and based on the correct answer, we should frame the distractors so that the distractors are also more or less appealing with that of the correct answer. And now, what is our job 2? So we should be very clear that the question item or the item stem should be very clear, and it should be well written stems that reflects the learning outcomes for each and every course or for each and every unit that has to be tested. That point we should be very clear. And the second point is that, as I've mentioned, all the alternatives should be adequate and it should be all appealing. And the third point is that the distractors should also be almost as appealing as the correct answer. So here, Dora have come to guide us all the way. So if we have to execute our job in a best way to set the multiple choice question, these are the 3 points which everyone must be very clear enough, and we should enjoy with all these. And here we go with the 10 golden rules, or we could say that 10 commandments. And these golden rules have been taken by Haladina and Downing, 1989 in the year, who has developed rules one should follow while constructing the multiple choice questions. So if you find time, you can just go through this and you can find much more things. I've picked up only the 10 important golden rules here. So now here, let us see the first rule. So the first rule says that list the alternatives on separate lines and one right after the other, and it makes easier to read and is much less confusing. So here we have a question, as the first president of India was. On either side, I have given the question with all the 4 alternatives. So now it's time to see whether the way it has to be done or the way it has to be not done. So let us see which is the best one. By now, you can guess in what way, if it has to be represented by using the rule 1, you can have your guess now. Yes, here we are just looking at the options or the alternatives. So if you just look at the tick mark, which is done with a green background, so that is the way it has to be done so that the learners will be able to have a attractiveness towards the question and will have much less confusing towards the given alternatives along with the distractors and the correct answer. So this is the first rule. And we'll have few trials for that. So what is the most complex level in the taxonomy of the cognitive domain? So long back, I have done revised Bloom's taxonomy. So in that, we have seen various levels. And here we have a question as, what is the most complex level in the taxonomy of the cognitive domain? Yes, here, based on the rule 1, we all the alternatives one by one, right after the other. And this is how one has to frame a multiple choice question. This is all about rule 1. And we could say that metacognition is the complex level in the taxonomy of the cognitive domain. And again, we have one more trial for this. Get along with me. Please do read the passage, whatever is given there. Read the following comments that a teacher is about to test the students here. And it says that students go to school to learn, not to take tests. In addition, tests cannot be used to indicate a student's absolute level of learning. All tests can do this, rank students in order to achievement. And this relative ranking is influenced by guessing, bluffing, and the subjective opinions of the teacher doing the scoring. The teacher learning process would benefit if we did away with tests and depended on student self-evaluation. So what for this passage? Because it is an outcome-based education, like we are into the autonomous status also, in these cases, few of the questions, we should have a new innovative thing, which is related to the syllabus, that should not be taught in the class for the students. So those questions with the 4 or 3 sentences we can have here as a comprehension, and from that we can just question the students. So the question is very, very important. So the question here is, which one of the following types of the test is this teacher primarily talking about? Here we go with the 4 alternatives: retest, formative test, pretest, summative test. And as I've said very clearly, that rule 1, we should have all the alternatives one after the other. And first thing, as soon as a question has been framed, we'll have to first give the correct answer. And after having the correct answer, we'll have to have the distractors that are also most appealing and very close to the correct answer. So here we have 4 options. By now, everybody would have guessed what will be the answer for this question. It is formative test. So this formative test will help us to understand what level the student have understood that particular subject. So this question is based for the formative test. So here, let's see what Aladdin is thinking about. Yes, that is rule 2. So rule 2, it says that each and every item should clearly reflect the learning outcome. So it is very, very important. So before we set any multiple choice question, we should be very thorough and we should have a precise knowledge of setting the question to the entire course. So first thing, it should have or it should reflect for the defined learning outcome. That is rule 2. Oh my God, our super genie has brought us something. Let us see what is all about that. Yes, that is rule 3, balance the key, which means that suppose say, for example, we have 20 questions and the option correct answer should not be always given for one particular thing. That is, whenever you pick the option C, definitely 50% of the times it will be right. It should not be that way. So we'll have to balance the key in such a way that 25% of the time has to be given for the students. Say, for example, if you have 20 questions, so you can have 5 as 25%. So let it be A for 25%, B option to B for 25%, and so on. So that is all about rule 3. And next C. Oh, now this Abu is confused with this grammar and he is also confusing us too. Let us see what a confusion he has and let us see whether we could be able to clear his confusion. Now, let us look into the next rule, rule 4. Avoid grammatical clues. So what is all about that? Say, for example, now firefox is or is an. Now let us look into the 4 options. Here we have option A to be as mixture of onions, carrots, and celery. B option to be as ingredients for making ice cream. And C option is entry served in Japan. And D option is alternative to flour used in baking. So what this grammatical clue given over here is that, as I've said already, all the distractors should be more or less close and it should be appealing one to the correct option. And here this grammatical clue, I mean, you just look into the B option and in the B option, you have it to be as ingredients. It is plural. But in the question, if you just look at it, it is Meyerpox is. So is here is a singular. So by now, the students will automatically say that we can neglect of B and he can go for only 3 options. This kind of thing has to be avoided. So we should be very clear in such a way that whenever we say multiple choice question, grammar also plays. We'll have to be very careful and we'll have to see what is the tense or what is the gender or what is a plural, is it a plural or singular? Everything matters a lot here. So this is all for outcome-based education. We'll have to concentrate. Now, Tom is very happy that he has got a clear and precise language. Let's see about that. So that is rule 5. And here in this rule 5, it says that the stem of the item, that is the question or the statement, it should be self-contained and written in a very clear and precise language. So that is very important. Whenever we set a question, the question should be self-contained within that learning outcome, and it should be very clear and precise language. And we here have an example for it. New York City is the site of the next Olympics, and A option has a new stadium for track and field. B option is building a new stadium for track and field. C option will be using only the Jets Stadium in New Jersey, and D option has not yet completed plans for where stadium events will take place. So if you just look at this example, the statement, it is very clear and it is within a precise language. So we don't have any grammatical clues over here. And also, if you just look into the statement, it is self-contained for that particular statement, and we can just pick up the correct option. So you have a correct answer for this. You also have the distractors that are very close to the correct option. So this is how one has to go with. Oh my God, now Tom is very angry because of the complexity. I think so. Let us see what he is telling or what confusions he have. So that is rule 6. Avoid complex multiple choice items. So which means that, let us see an example for it. Who received a Nobel Prize for discovering the structure of DNA? So here we have the options. A option is Francis Crick. B option is James Watson. C option is Rosalind Franklin. D option is A and B. E option is both B and C. And F option is both A and C. So these kind of alternatives should be avoided. So we should have only 4 options. That will be better. And we should not have more than 4 options and less than 2 options. And of course, this kind of a complex multiple choice items, like if you just look at the D option, E option, F option, So it is both like A and B, B and C, and A and C. Try to avoid these complex multiple choice items. So we should not have this kind of an options. That is all about rule 6. And whenever we know, obviously, the structure of DNA, it was discovered for the Nobel Prize by James Watson, but we should not have this kind of a distractors. And next, now Jeannie has got rule 8. Sorry, before that we'll see what is all about rule 7. Use plausible distractors. What is all about plausible distractors? That is, the alternatives should be logical and related to the stem, or we call it to be as an item stem. Say, for example, if the question is the square root of 64 is, of course, we all know it to be as 8. That is the option B. And we have 3 distractors, A to be as 64, C to be as 642, and D to be as 48. So by this rule 7, what I could say is that we should not have any of the option to be as a decimal one. So we should not have it as 8.3 or 8.7 or 8.9. So in there itself, the students will be able to omit of that. We should first fix up the correct answer and then the distractors, and those distractors should be more or less close to the correct answer, and it should all be appealing one. So that is what we mean by rule 7. And next, rule 8. Now Jeannie has got rule 8. That's very short and sweet, which everyone might be knowing this. That is, we need not have the option as none of the above or all of the above for the given question. So that is all about rule 8. Now let us see the next one. Yes, now Jeannie is glad here, and let's see the reason for his happiness. That is rule 9. So rule 9, it says that we'll have to keep the length of the options fairly consistent. So let us have an example for that. The current population of India is, A option is India is the second most populous country in the world with 1.3 billion. And B option is, sorry, it should be 1.2 billion, yes. And C, it is 1 billion. And D, it is indeterminate. So here, if you just look at A option, the length of options, it is not fairly consistent here. So it is lengthy when compared to the rest of the 3 options. So whenever we have the alternatives, see to that the length are more or less same for all the alternatives, so that the students will not have a guess, or students will not just like that neglect the option, or the students will not just pick up only for the namesake. This is a lengthy one, that might be a correct answer. It will not be done. So that is what about rule 9. And next is, we just look into the last rule, rule 10. Fine, here a magical mat has brought the positivity for us. Let us see what is all about that. So rule 10, it is avoid using negative phrasing in the stem. So let us see an example for that. Which of the following is not true about the Olympics? I have told you rule 10, it is a negative, avoid negative phrasing, but then in cases, very rare case, suppose if we want to use a negative phrasing, either we'll have to bold or capitalize the negative word, so that the students will not go wrong anywhere. So here I have a question as, which of the following is not true about Olympics? So here not, it has been capitalized, and also it has been bold. So all of a sudden, if a student looks at this question, he'll not be confused. So he'll be very thorough that it is a negative statement that is not here is highlighted, so that he will give us a correct answer. So A option, it is conducted once in 4 years. B option, it is conducted once in 2 years. C option, the first game were in 776 BC. And D option, women are allowed to participate in Olympics. So out of which, by now we know the answer for this. So the thing is that I'm not testing whether you know the answer or not. You should know how to frame a question. That is much more important here in this today's session. So that is all about rule 10. And next, we have the additional tips for creating multiple choice questions. As I've told, we should limit the number of options. That is, we should not go beyond 4 options, or we should not have less than 2 options. So in between 2 to 4, that is acceptable. And we should have the correct answer before creating the distractors. That also we have discussed. We should not have the multiple correct answer. That will make the students to get confused. So only out of all the 4 alternatives, only one should be the correct one. And avoid unnecessary repetition in the response options. So our alternatives should not be repeated. That is, say, for example, if every response starts with the phrases in the, then put in the as the part of the stem itself. We need not have that in the in each and every of the alternatives given. Here we go with the formative assessment. Yes. Now it's time. Can we have the poll, please? First trial. I request the participants to just poll few of the questions as trial question. So here we have trial 1. The question is on the way. Don't be excited. Sometimes it is 34%. And the third option, it's almost always the correct answer. And it's often stuffed with new information that should have gone in the stem of the item, but we forget, so we are putting it in the options because we can't possibly leave out all the tiniest details. That is 33%, occasionally is 22%. Now here we have a bit difficult to tell us what percentage really suits this question. And I could say that if you have opted for rarely or sometimes, that will be the better one. And we could say that sometimes or rarely will be the best option for this question. So those who have opted for the C and D, slightly we'll have to improvise ourselves. We'll have to just think over the question and then we'll have to give. So third and fourth option, those who opted it, you can just improvise it and still we have a time to go. Thank you. And next we'll go for the third trial. Kindly do poll. Yes, here we have the question. When is all the above correct answer? We give you a few minutes to poll this question. Yes. Yes, come on. Yes, we are getting. Yes. And I'm happy to see that most of the faculty members are giving their options. Really exciting. Okay, at this point, we shall just stop it and we shall see what percentage have answered the question. Yes. So with alarming regularity, it is 2% and 41% of us have polled for when we try to cover too much in one question, and 20% have said that when we use a question to teach instead of assesses, and 37% have said that all of the above. So here, as I told you, among all the four alternatives given, we don't have an exact answer for this question. So the question itself says that when is all of the above the correct answer? So which means that it all depends upon the paper setter, I could say. So the mind of the setter, however he does it. So might be we can take the second and the fourth option to be the closest option for this question. So that is when we try to cover too much in one question, you can have as all of the above as one of the option, or like the fourth option, it is all of the above. That is the three options put together. We can have, so most probably we can have that 41% B option to be the answer for this question at this point of time. So thank you one and all for polling this. And next thing, we have few more questions. We'll just quickly do that. Here we have the question. Yes, the next one is, when is it not a good idea to avoid negative questions? This we have seen in rule 4, negativity. So here we have the four options is never, sometimes, always, what? Yes, come on, go with the poll. Yes, we could see the answers. That's brilliant. Okay, I hope at this point of time you can just stop that and we'll see the answers. Poll result, yes. So the first option, it is never. 12% of us have opted for it, and 46% of us have said that sometimes it is not good idea to avoid negative questions, and always 35% have opted it, and 7% what. Fine. So at this point of time, I would say that second option, sometimes it is not good idea to avoid negative questions. Suppose in case we want to have negative questions, we can just bold it, capitalize it according to the rule, whatever thing we have said. Keep everything in your mind, 10 commandments that we have just seen it, and based on that, one can set the multiple choice question. Thank you for polling this trial. And next is two more trials we have. We'll just check it out. Can we have poll 5? Yes. How often is the correct answer A? We have four options as A, B, C, D. So how often we get the correct answer to be as A? Usually, frequently, often, and the fourth option. Yes. And I am very happy to say that the other end participants are really taking interest, and you are taking part in the poll also. Thank you so much. Okay, at this point of time, we'll just stop it and we'll just look into the poll result. Yes, here usually 2% of the faculty have given us, that is exactly good, and 22% frequently they have said, often is 31%, and almost never, because if A is the right answer, then definitely the learner will not look at the rest of the alternatives. So we'll go with the D option. 45% have opted in. So the faculty members, those who opted as usually, frequently, often, with the percentage is 2%, 22%, 31% respectively, can slightly improvise it, and you can come into the category of D option. That is the best one here for this question. So this also I have mentioned in my 10 commandments. Yes, the next one, the last one, can we go with the poll? Here we can confuse learners when we fail to actually complete the sentence we started in the question. B option is sometimes we veer off into another idea entirely. And third option is inconsistent grammar in the options. And fourth is wombat. Yes, good. Immediately you are giving me the result. Yes. That's really great. And we could see many of the faculty members, participants from the other end are really doing wonders. And at this point of time, we can just stop it and we can just see for the poll result. Yes, we have a poll result here. 31% have opted as failed to actually complete the sentence we started in the question. And 33%, sometimes we veer off into another idea entirely. That also happens. 29% says that inconsistent grammar in the option, and very 6% is opting for umband. So here we could say at this point of time, either A or B will go with that. So I thank all the participants here for giving your interest and your kindfulness for executing all these poll questions. Now, next we have, so with this, what I try to say is that whatever may be the option given by you, if it is of category what we have discussed, then we could say that we are the best setter for the multiple choice questions based on the outcome-based education. Suppose in case if we are slightly in a decrease mode, we'll have to improvise ourselves. We have enough time and that it can be done. And next we have item analysis. And what is all about this item analysis? I could say that this analysis is the critical starting point of strategic thinking. So we'll just look into what is all about the item analysis. Do we really need item analysis? Yes, of course, we need for item analysis. This item analysis will give us the information on 3 categories. So first one is, it will give the information that how well it is discriminated between high and low scorers on the test. And also it will give the information if an item was too easy or it was too difficult. And finally, it will give the information whether all the alternatives functioned as intended. So if we have all these 3, definitely we should need for the item analysis. Let us see in the forthcoming slides. Yes, look at this. The procedure for item analysis, I could say it all depends on 3 categories. The first picture, if you just look at it, it is overexposed. So overexposed in the sense, if you just look at the flower, it is dull, right? It is not that very bright or it is not that very good looking. And if you just look at the second picture, it is underexposed, it is very dark. And if you see the third picture or the image, it is normal exposed, which means that everything, it is clearly visible to everyone. So even the minute things, it is visible there from the third picture or the image. So this item analysis procedure, it should be normally exposed to everyone. That is what we mean here by item analysis. So let us further move. Yes. What makes an assessment good? So here, once if we go for the last assessment part, after giving the instructions, objectives, moving on to the assessment, what makes it to be as very good? It is based on only 2 factors. One is called as the difficulty index. The other one is called as the discrimination index. So what's the difference between these 2? Before we further move, I could just elaborately tell you what is about this. And this difficult index means item difficulty is the percentage of learners who answered an item correctly. And discrimination index is that it is an item that is an ability to distinguish high and low scoring learners. That is the difference between this. That is, it reflects, the difficulty index reflects students' varied level of understanding, but the discrimination index, it will be fair, and the students with a better understanding should definitely perform well. So that is where this discrimination index stands. So let me just debrief about difficulty index. So that is how difficult the item is, or how many people got that item correct. Or I could say this in the other way as, it is a percentage that reflects the number of responses in both high and low group that got the item correct. Say, for example, in a class, if we have 50 students, right? I just give you an example for a difficulty index here. In a class, if we have 50 students, and if we give one item in the sense a multiple choice question, and out of 50, if 37 students or 35 students are answering the question correct, then 37 or 35 by 40, which means that here the difficulty index, it is correct. We have more correct answers. So therefore, the difficulty index for that particular question is right. So that we'll take that question forward and we will proceed. Suppose, say, for example, out of 50 students in a class, only if 7 or 8 are getting correct answers for given question, the difficulty level index, it is too bad and it is poor. We'll have to discard that question and we'll have to have some other question, see to that it suits the difficulty level. And next, coming on to the discrimination index part, this is the power of the item to discriminate the students between those who scored high and those who scored low in the overall test. Which means, again, if we have in a class 50 students, suppose, for example, if we have high scorers or high learners as 25 and low learners or slow learners to be as 25. And if a question is given, out of 25 high learners, if 17 have answered that question, and out of 25 in the slow learners, if only 3 or 4 have answered that question, that question is a good question and we give the discrimination index to be as good, and this discrimination index will vary from -1 to +1. As when we talk about the difficulty index, it will be in terms of percentage, and here we'll have as decimals. We also have the formula to execute it to check whether each and every question has the difficulty index and discrimination index properly. So let us see and let us move forward. Yes. And now we have the tools for analysis, that is difficulty of the item, that could be represented as capital D, and discriminating power of the item, it is denoted by small d. Yes. So here, the next thing is, let me tell you how to calculate the difficulty level and the discrimination level. So this is very, very important for every one of us being a teacher, how to set a multiple choice question with a good difficulty index and with a good discrimination index. So here capital D represents the difficulty index, and the formula for that is capital H plus capital L into 100 whole divided by T. I will tell you what is all about the H, L and T. And coming on to the discrimination part, we have, it is represented by small d, and that is equal to capital H minus capital L divided by 0.5 times capital T. So here, H represents the number of correct responses in higher group, and capital L represents number of correct responses in lower group, and T represents the total number of responders from both groups. So that is all about this capital H and capital L. T, it is the total number. So for each and every question, if we go with this formula for difficulty index and for discrimination index, then it will be the best question paper set by us. So let us see what should be the variation, and if it has this kind of a percentage, can we accept it or should we have to discard it? We'll move to the further slides and we'll see that. Yes, here I have mentioned difficulty index. I have also said that the index range, difficulty level. So if you have, make use of that formula, and if it comes to 0 to 20% for each and every item stem, that is the question, it is very difficult. And if we have it as 21 to 40%, it is difficult. And if it is from 41 to 60%, it is average or moderate difficult, we could say. And if it is between 61 to 80%, it is easy, and above 80%, it is very easy, we could say. So let us see in the further slides how we could modify this. And next we have the discrimination index here, and the range is also given. And if it is less than or equal to 0.19, we have poor item, and that should be eliminated or need to be revised. And if it lies between 0.2 to 0.29, marginal item and it needs some revision. And if it is between 0.3 to 0.39, it is reasonably good, but possible for improvement. And if it is greater than or equal to, that is 0.4 and above, it is a very good item. And this reference, I've taken it from a level of discrimination able 1986 and Hetzel 1997. If you find time, please go through all these things, and definitely we can just improve our level of setting a multiple choice question. Here we have item difficulty capital D, that is capital D, and discrimination index small d. Suppose in case if the item difficulty capital D, it is 30%, it is very poor, what action we have to take is that we will have to discard that question. And if it is 40%, we do say it to be as marginal, and it could be possible for us to revise. And good and excellent, if it is 50% and above 60%, we can just store the question and we can have it for the students. And next is discrimination index, that is small d. If it is less than 0, I've already said that discrimination index is between -1 to +1. If it is less than 0, immediately discard it and have next question. And if it is 0.15 to 0.24, we need revision for that. So it can be revised and we can include it. And if it is 0.25 to 0.34, we can just take the question and have it in our paper. And if it is greater than 0.35, it is very excellent and we can store it for our examinations. And now let us see what's the relationship between the item difficulty and discrimination index. Here we have the graph for that. See, horizontal axis, it represents the difficulty level, and vertical axis, it represents the discrimination level. Difficulty level, if the percentage, if it goes till 75, 100%, since because it has to be answered by all the students, only few questions will be answered by the creamy part of the students. So that is why I marked it to be as 25% to 75%, or even it can go for 100 to a certain number of questions. And if you just look at the discrimination level, there we have an arrow mark pointing to as 0.2 and above. So if the discrimination level is starting from 0.2 or 0.25, and if it reaches 1, that is very good. And if it comes to the third and fourth quadrant, we just discard it and we'll have to revise the questions. So which means that from this graph, what I could say is that if your question difficulty and in discrimination level are in the first 2 quadrants, it can be accepted. And if it is in the third and fourth quadrant, it has to be discarded and we'll have to have another question for that. And we have, I've taken the references from Tests and Measurement for People Who Think They Hate Tests and Measurements by Neil J. Salkind. Thank you very much. And thank you for the patience listening and giving your polls. Hope I have done my job with the stipulated time. I would like to thank a management chief executive and principal for giving me an opportunity to share my little understanding on how to set multiple choice questions based on the outcome-based education. And this is an art to be learned by a teacher or every one of us. Thank you once again.